And so we've been using the Claude Code, MCP, and this new workflow pattern that we've been developing that utilizes Claude Code slash commands under the hood to help facilitate some processes and like automate away some of our admin work. And we've been sharing some of these with our customers, and then we've been asked to share um, uh, like what this actually looks like behind the scenes. So I'm just going to record this quick video, and at the end of this, hopefully you'll be able to just take some of those files, adapt them to your own use cases, have them talk to your own systems, and automate some of your own workflows using your own LLM. So for this example, we're going to take a look at one of the things that we've automated, which is our ideation workflow. So the idea is that over here on the right, we have Vistaly, and inside of this, we have a bunch of different customer opportunities that we've identified through running interviews. So we've got interview data in here, we've got insights, we've got metrics that are coming from, we're using PostHog, so PostHog metrics. And all of that information is in here. And what we would typically do is pull all that information together, share it, and then come up, give that to the team so they have some time to think about how could we solve these things. We take all those ideas, we map them out, we pick a few, we spend some more time on developing those solutions, coming up with potential prototypes, and then testing some assumptions that we have around those. And that process can tend to take a little bit, and there's a lot of manual steps in there of collecting information, creating new cards in Vistaly or issues in GitHub and Linear, and I want to automate a lot of that away. So that's what this is going to do. So once you create these slash commands, these workflow files, they'll be available to you in Claude Code. So over here on the left, let's just take a look at this. So I've got this ideation workflow that I just ran over here. It's going to read that slash command, and it's going to start running a bunch of different steps here. So let's just give it a second to take a look. Okay, great. So now it's on step 1 of 10. So this process has 10 different steps. It actually has more than that because some of these steps call out to other slash commands that have their own workflow processes, and we'll get into why that can be beneficial here in a moment. But first, let's just kind of follow this. So it says, provide the text from the opportunity that we want to solve for, or we can even give it the URL. So I'll just give it the URL. Oh, that's not the full URL. Okay. All right. So now Claude's going to go out to Vistaly using MCP. It's going to grab the information it needs. It's going to look at parent opportunities, metric data, all of that, and it's going to pull it together into a little brief here that we can use to start coming up with some solutions. So while it's doing that, let's just hop over to one of the workflows. So this is the ideation workflow. It's just a markdown file. So all of this is being done just using markdown and MCP. So the way that I like to structure my files is to use XML-like tags to create like clean blocks and steps. It makes it helps organize the file, but it also helps guide the agent to behave the way that you want it to behave. And I'll show you how I do that. So for example, we have this context block at the top that just kind of describes what this workflow does. There's this interesting section here called role definitions. Sometimes I want some steps in this workflow, I want the agent to act like a facilitator. Sometimes I don't want it to, I just want it to do something, and that's what the actor role is. And then sometimes I want it to behave more like a sparring partner, and that's what collaborator is. And then down below, we actually have the workflow. So one thing I found is that when I was developing these, they started to get more complex and bigger, and then it was getting really hard to reason about them, even if you keep your file really clean. And I wanted a way to visually see them. Also, I wanted, the one thing I found is that by providing like this diagram. So this is a mermaid diagram. This is the actual like visual representation of this workflow. If I pull that into, there's several different tools that you can use to visualize these. But if I pull that into the workflow or into one of those tools, I can actually see the workflow. But then also my agent has access to the same graph over here. These different steps map to steps in the workflow down below. I find that it just makes it easier to follow as I'm, building and testing, different parts of it. It's just easier to refine the workflow. So yeah, down below we have workflow, we've got the steps. I've got a title for the workflow, which is used in the output inside of Claude Code. And then I've got a role that I assign to each step. So this is where it's like I'm saying, hey, in this step, I want you to act like a facilitator. Don't get over eager. Don't try to do something. I just want you to ask for information. Whereas in like step 2, just go do the thing that I'm telling you to do here. Okay, let's switch back over to Claude and see where it's at. Great, cool. So Claude went and got a bunch of information from our tree, and then now it's saying, hey, let's go ahead and stop here and collect some user solutions for this opportunity that we want to solve for. So I'm just gonna just put down a couple of quick things. MCP, let's just say better MCP. Okay, so now if we hop over here, you can see get the story, display the story. So this is where it's on. So it was on this step of like displaying the story. And one of the things that can be helpful is trying to control the output of some of these steps. So here we have output format for step 4. So if we go down to the bottom of the workflow file, you can see output format. So this is how I wanted that step to print out the story, print out the information that it collected from Vistaly using MCP, and then just a couple of extra notes on what to do and what not to do when it's doing that. So let's come back here. So you can see now we're on step 6, collaborative solution development. So now I want the LLM to be collaborative with us. So we've shared our ideas, and now I want the LLM to come in and augment that. So hey, let's just see if it can come up with some new ideas or creative ideas that maybe we haven't thought about. Sometimes this is helpful. Sometimes it's just all throwaway. It really depends on how much thought you're putting into these solutions, the ones that you provide to the agent. So one thing that I found really helpful is that I like to collect a bunch of input from the team, let them think about the problem first, and then provide a bunch of solutions, and then share those all at once. The way that we have been doing this in the past few sessions is we jump into Slack and say, hey, just go ahead and write out all the ideas that you can think of right now and put them into one Slack channel, but don't hit enter, just like wait. And then all of a sudden we'll hit enter at the same time. Everybody's ideas get posted, and I just copy and paste the whole thing and just put it right into here. Then Claude Code will just go through and kind of organize it, clean it up, and just structure all the ideas. The other thing I like to do is when I'm outputting it and there's like a step where it needs to ask you about a selection, I like to make sure that it numbers everything, because what I like to do is say, okay, hey, I want to keep 1, 2, and let me just read some of these real quick. We'll just say maybe one of the AI generated ideas was good, so we'll keep that. Keep 1, 2, and 3. Oops, spelled keep wrong, but it doesn't matter. Okay, so now this is where it gets into some of the interesting stuff. So I wanted it to do a little bit of the admin work for us. I don't want to go into Vistaly and add those cards and copy stuff over. I want it to do it. So this step is just confirming, hey, do you want me to add these 3 to this card here? So I hit yes, and now it's going to go through using MCP. It's going to write those ideas back to Vistaly, and it's going to also provide extra information depending on how we spar with it when we're refining those ideas. it'll add some extra information to that card, to the details. Okay, great. So now it is grabbing those cards. You can see it's automatically adding those to Vistaly. All right, great. So next it gets to this step, which is a deep dive. So typically the next thing we'll do is like, okay, of these, 5 to whatever, 7 ideas that we have, which ones do we think we want to invest? Which ones are going to be the front runners? So let's just say, for time's sake, let's just do 2. So what this does is it goes into another workflow file. So originally we had this as one giant workflow, but what I found is it's really helpful to break your workflows down into smaller chunks. So let's say we only had time to do the ideation session. We don't have time to do this deep dive into like, what does this solution actually look like? What are the technical considerations? Just kind of like actually fleshing it out. Maybe we don't have time to do that. Well, if we break them into separate workflows, I can kill this process over on the left, Claude Code, and just restart it later and just start the solution deep dive workflow. And that'll just go, and I can just pass it this solution, whichever one I've selected. And now I'm just picking up in like that smaller workflow. So makes it, by breaking them down, it just makes it a lot more composable and useful later on. It also makes it a lot easier to test and iterate on workflows when they're smaller. All right, so what's it doing here? So now it wants us to talk about this solution to really kind of flush it out and add more details to it. So once we do that, I have this workflow talking to GitHub. So once we've gotten it to a certain point, we can kick it over to GitHub and it'll just create a ticket over there. Let's see here. Let me just look through my notes and see if there's anything else worth talking about. Talked about that. We talked about that. Okay, yeah. So let's jump over here. So it can be, one thing that I found really helpful is when you're developing these workflows, let's say you, oh, that's the actual diagram. Let's hop over here and just take a look at it in here. So let's say you want to like introduce a step between 8 and 9, but that means that you're gonna have to shift step 9 to be step 10, and then every step after that you're gonna have to shift it by 1, and then you might have to go down to the output section if there's some steps there that are related to it, and you're gonna have to update the diagram at the top. Well, that can be really annoying and error prone. So what I'll typically do is just have Claude inject the new step, automatically increment the other steps, keep the mermaid diagram up to date by adding the new step, and then also just the output section as well. So just have it like manage the workflow steps and make sure that, obviously double check it, but then you can come in afterwards and then just fill in like the details around, how should it behave in that step. So like add the role and whatnot. I find that really helpful. And then the other thing is version control is really important. So when you're working in Claude Code, it has access to the code base. If you check these files in, you can iterate on them, and you don't want to like accidentally make a mistake. If you're using version control, you can always just go back to a working version, which you will thank yourself for. Oh, that's another, interesting thing to point out. So when you're doing the ideation session, we really wanted these workflows to be smarter. So by running it in Claude Code, it has direct access to our entire mono repo. And when it's coming up with ideas, it helps, it helps with the specifications to be able to just access the current code. And we found that can be really helpful. All right, so depending on where you find this video, you probably have access to some of these workflows already. If you have any questions, you can always hit me up at matt@vistaly.com. I also post a lot about this stuff on LinkedIn, so you can find me there. And then I'd be really interested to hear what kind of workflows you create with your team. If you find any patterns that can make this better, please do share those. Yeah, just reach out if you have any questions.